Let's roll that theme tune, shall we, and get into some Iberian. Let's check on our Iberian status this morning after this. Oh, good morning to you, James. Nice big round of applause for you.
Thank you. I hope that's not computer generated, that applause. I hope that's actual fans.
We have got a room full of people here giving you a round of applause. We don't do that AI sort of stuff. How are you this morning?
I'm good. I was hoping that, usually on Zoom you can blur the background, and I was like, shit, I can't do that here. So I hope it's not looking too rough.
I see. Yes, you're a StreamYard. You're a StreamYard, and no, you actually look really well organized. And
really? Look, I got my IKEA bins for all my camera gear.
It didn't go unnoticed. Is that full of tech and kit?
That's full of tech. It used to be all just in one big bin, and then I've got bins for all the different bits and pieces. So yeah, full of tech.
Sub bins. That's incredible. Wonderful. We're so glad to have you here. This is your official spiel here. Founder of Spain Revealed, where you help curious people experience Spain profoundly and authentically. And I love those two words, by the way. Whether coming for a visit or moving to Spain, you run the signature Move to Spain Masterclass, which is an 8-week program that gives people the knowledge, tools, and support to start living their ideal life in Spain without costly mistakes. That's fantastic. You also, as well as saving them money, you save them time and that dreaded Facebook misinformation thing as well, because I'm sure we'll talk about that. You're also host of the Spain Revealed YouTube channel with videos about the food and culture of Spain and the avoidance of white asparagus, which has received 700,000 views a month. Wow, you got to tell me how to do that, James. And you're the co-founder of Devour Tours, one of the world's leading food tour travel companies. So loads to talk about this morning. I hope you can give us at least 30 minutes of your valuable time this morning to talk about this. I can. How did you get into it, James?
Well, I'm from New Zealand, and so I moved to Madrid. I'm in Madrid. I moved here 12 years ago now. And I was in advertising when I moved. I was a TV commercial director, and I hated it. And so, as you'll know, when you move overseas, a lot of people go through a moment where they can kind of reinvent themselves or redefine themselves because you sort of have this break, right, from the past. So I quit after 6 weeks what I was doing, working at a production company, directing TV commercials. And I was like, I'm going to be a travel writer. I was falling in love with Spain and the culture. I was like, I'm going to be a travel writer. I love writing. And I thought I would, be writing articles for the New York Times travel section within sort of 3 weeks and things like that. And obviously that didn't happen.
Of course.
So I started to guide because that's how I could actually earn a living. And in the end, I just loved guiding. I loved food tour guiding. I met my co-founding partner in Devour, and we built that up. And at the same time, when I stopped guiding after about 5 years as the company was growing, I missed it. Although the company had gotten so big that I couldn't really just spend my time guiding tours anymore. And so I started the YouTube channel because it's a way of guiding people without actually, doing a tour. And it just sort of grew from there. And then during the pandemic, tourism was down, didn't have a lot to do. And noticed a lot of people who watched the YouTube channel were actually looking to move to Spain. I was like, oh, that's interesting. And I saw in Italy, there's a company that does a course of helping people to move here. And I thought, that could be interesting, a bit of video. I was a lawyer in a former life, so the legal side I kind of enjoy, and I put this course together, and it's been running. We're just about to do the 7th cohort now, and it's going like gangbusters, and I love it because it's a combination of just sort of therapy, legal advice, all those different things to help people move here.
Oh, that's fantastic, and that's why your videos are so darn good, because of this background of making commercials.
Yeah, that does help. I mean, I come from my brother's a producer for TV stuff in London. My dad, who's retired now, is a was a TV commercial director and cinematographer. So we've kind of got it in our blood a little bit. That YouTube's its own beast, as you know, and it's taken me a while to figure that out. And actually, look, I released a video at the beginning of this year, which was, I thought it was going to be amazing. And the learning never stops. The learning never stops, Carl. And it was the least successful. It was a disaster. I was like, I'm going to go vegan in Spain. And, and I was like, it's going to be amazing. But you know, that was a moment. I was like, okay, people who watch my channel, rightly or wrongly, are not that interested in being vegan in Spain. Some are.
What were you thinking?
I thought it'd be like, hey.
Yeah, I totally get that. And that feeling, you know, this is a great idea. You know, you're out walking the streets of where you love and you think, I know, I'll make this video and it's going to be a surefire winner and be the most popular one I've done. Not only is it not, it's kind of like, it can be the least popular, can't it? So you're absolutely right about YouTube. Not that I know a lot about it, a fraction, I'm sure, of what you know about it, but you just never know, do you, with that beast, as I think you described.
You never know. But it was helpful in the end because it helped me really kind of with my editor button down almost like a bit of a process to define as much as you can, let's science side of, is a video going to do well or not? And is it what people want to see? And actually the last 4 have been some of the most successful I've ever made. So I feel like I'm sort of going, but then I'm sure the next one will be a disaster. So, you know, who knows?
I loved it, by the way. And I'm well aware of your feelings about white asparagus. And I really liked the, you know, being vegan in Spain, because you put, I was mentioning earlier on, I'm trying to buy a new electricity supplier. And I was going to put myself through a sort of supersize me experiment and sign up publicly with the community here and see what happens, where, you know, whether the tariff goes up later, whether I'm signed into it for 3 generations, and be like Morgan Spurlock. I mean, your video was really like that, wasn't it? You really lived it, you know, with the vegan thing. It was superb, the video you made. And it's
well, I appreciate that. I thought it was, you know, I thought the video itself was good. I mean, what was disappointing, I guess, about that video, the non-vegans hated it and the vegans hated it as well, because they
we could have probably guessed that, though. The vegan audience is quite a tough one to satisfy. I think.
So anyway, don't make any vegan videos, Carl.
You just weren't vegan enough, possibly, with it.
I wasn't vegan enough for the vegans, and I was too vegan for the non-vegans. So you know, nobody cared.
Tricky territory. And I love the timeline you gave there as well. You know, the pandemic curveball. You know, you starting out as a writer, and we can say good morning to Beyond Lisbon, Katia Lima, who is a great writer as well, like yourself. Bon dia to you. I recommend checking out her Beyond Lisbon blog.
Cool.
And so you were starting out there as the writer. You were going to be, you know, lauded internationally for your writing about Spain, a kind of Hemingway vibe, perhaps. Of all the wonderful things you were doing over there. And did the same thing happen for Spain as happened in Portugal, whereby the pandemic brought in a whole load of new interest internationally? People were reevaluating their lives. And was there something going on there that took you in a new direction with newfound global interest, maybe especially American?
I think so. I think it was happening before the pandemic. You know, the people who take my course come from all over the world, and people who watch my channel. But it's true that the biggest kind of chunk are probably people from the US, Canada, and for whatever reason. And so I noticed before the pandemic, there was a woman who's here in Spain who released a book, like, you know, kind of how to get out of America, or, you know, 20 countries you could move to. And so there was kind of like there was chatter. And I think this was just because of the political situation in the States. People feel so polarized, they don't feel comfortable, you know, particularly people with families, gun violence, things like that. So there was a move. And I think the pandemic contributed to that, because, you know, I mean, for me personally as well, I reevaluated my life. I had a, you know, I didn't have the baby, but, you know, my wife had a baby during the pandemic, pivoted my career. And so it was, I think we all reevaluated. So if you were already kind of feeling like, oh, maybe the US or maybe whatever isn't the right place for me, the pandemic kind of gave us this chance of like, well, for some people, maybe I can do anything, and maybe this is the time. The time to make a move is now, right? Because life's too short, et cetera, cliche. But we all reevaluated. We had some time to think, and we saw people around us moving to the countryside and, you know, doing all the stuff. Yeah. And so I think that just kind of like, it created, again, a break from the past where you could sort of rebuild. a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely right. Oh, and
Yeah.
why not? We felt quite mortal, didn't we, at the time? So, like,
Mm.
sod it. Let's go with this.
Yeah.
And so here in it's interesting as well. Here in Portugal, the Americans are very self-reflective and concerned about the impact they're making.
Mm.
As it turns out, less than 10,000 Americans, I think, in the 2020 census here, about 7 or 8,000 had arrived. Compared to 40,000 Brits who are in position
Yeah.
number 2. The Americans were 19th out of the 20 countries that made the biggest impact. I think there were, over 100,000, 150,000 Brazilian people coming over. Is it the same thing in Spain? Are American people afraid of the impact they're making over there? And how big are the numbers?
The numbers aren't that big. I did a video recently. I've learned since my vegan video that, do dramatic titles. Why are Americans fleeing to Spain was the title.
Yes.
When I interviews with Americans, and I said to the people I was interviewing, I said, just be aware that I'm going to use the word fleeing in the title. Are you okay with that? It's YouTube. And they're like, yeah, that's fine. So, I asked them, and, they were aware. These are people, a couple of them were from my course, another couple were through a contact. They're aware, but look, I think in the end, there's a lot of press about the impact Americans are having on Spain or Portugal for a couple of reasons. There's less than there are Brits, but it's true that Americans often come with a bigger budget, right? And so they can buy, nicer homes, they can spend more money, but there's just a lot less of them. I think that, how many Americans are in Valencia it's something like 10,000 or something like that, so okay, that's a lot, but relative to the impact they're having, there was an article in the New York Times which was about our Americans kind of destroying Southern Europe by moving, and there was a woman in Barcelona, a professor, who said, look, they're not having this effect. It's and this is not to say that you shouldn't be mindful when you move to a place, but just the math of it, it's really that after the economic crisis, there's a lot of vulture funds that bought up properties, and it's a whole kind of commercialization of homes, right? That's happening in the culture broadly. So I think Americans are aware that there's this conversation. I think the ones who have their heads switched on kind of know that, look, it's probably not that a big deal that we're having, but we have to be mindful of the fact that this is part of the conversation. But I think in Spain, the conversation traditionally around like the impact that foreigners have has always been more around tourism. Tourists go home in Barcelona, et cetera, et cetera. And so I don't see a lot of chatter amongst Spaniards around expats, which again is a dangerous term, destroying, rising property rates. People will flame me for saying it, but I just think it's probably not that big a deal.
It's not, is it? It's not as big as the headlines, and we've all been guilty, haven't we, of a bit of clickbait every now and then, and that's how it works, isn't it? The impact is not commensurate with the clickbaity headlines. However, you're right. I mean, we do need to be mindful about this. We can have the expat, immigrant, foreigner conversation, but more interestingly, you use the word conversation. You emphasize conversation. Is there any? And I'm trying to stimulate and sort of host this in Portugal as somebody who's sort of a visible part of the migrant community into Portugal. Is there a national conversation that unites all migrants coming into Spain, such that their presence is dealt with sensitively, mindfully, and they can look at their impact, but they can also look at the positive gifts that they're bringing to the culture as well? Is anything like that going on? Because there isn't really in Portugal, as far as I'm aware.
Not really. I mean, look, I think the reality is most people are just trying to kind of get by, right? We've had a pandemic.
True.
Spain is traditionally a country where people work long hours, where they don't necessarily earn a lot of money. And, childcare is hard. So I just think it's like, what is important to people? I think this is not a big deal for them. What is a big deal is housing prices, right? That is a big deal. But I don't think they're saying, and if somebody, when I made that video, there were some comments from people saying all these Americans coming in and driving up the housing prices, but I don't hear that in the street. It's more like they just see, I don't know if they kind of know why. They just see that housing prices are going up. It's happened. It's been a boom and bust economy. It happened before. And it's more about, often, I'm not an expert on why it is, but there's obviously multiple factors around, people buying up properties and Airbnb, and, Airbnb gets talked about as well. There's obviously a combination of all these things, but really it's like the commercialization of homes in a way, in our society. They're treated as investments. In my building, a couple just sold up in the top floor, a big apartment, and somebody, I don't know who it is, bought 2 of them and is dividing it up and turning into apartments. And they're going to rent them out, long-term rental. They're not going to do Airbnb. But, there's just a lot of that. People see those, particularly now when investments are hard, as a kind of a safer investment. And a traditional investment in Spain is property. So I'm just not sure if the conversation is about that. But somebody did say in one of the comments, which I thought was really nice, a Spanish woman in the YouTube video, she said, these Americans coming in, they need to be mindful of not kind of the way they talk and the way they exist in the culture. Don't be running around saying, oh my God, Spain's so cheap. It's just like, it's kind of bad manners, right? When it's cheap for you,
Yes. But it's hard not to say that, isn't it? Because people are genuinely shocked by that. But we, our Monday show is mindful migration. So, we've been banding that word around. Is that part of your masterclass? Do you actually directly address this that you've been talking about, and this matter of mindful migration?
I guess it just more, I don't have the masterclass is divided into 8 modules, and there's like a module on tax, module on immigration, module on all the different, pieces of your move. And so I don't have like a lesson or a module on sort of mindful migration, but I just, given the way I treat it and the kind of audience that I guess I attract, who are inherently mindful, the people who come in. And so it's conversations we do have in our live kind of classes that we have alongside the material that people watch, but it's not one class. It just sort of filters through the whole conversation. People come, we talk about learning Spanish and integration, and we have a tutor come in to give tips for, how to have good strategies for learning Spanish. And, but also I guess, at the beginning of the course, I get people to fill out like a vision checklist, which is like a 7-page vision checklist, which is kind of like saying, what kind of vision do you want for Spain? And one of the questions is like, who do you want to hang out with? Is it with other expats, foreigners, or is it with Spaniards? And most people want to hang out with, obviously, a mix. They realize the reality of that. But I'm also not going to judge if someone kind of wants to be like, kind of tuck themselves in and just have their foreign friends and things like that. But I just don't tend to attract a lot of those people, because I think the nature of the content on the YouTube channel.
Yeah, totally understand that. So tell us more about this, the 8-part masterclass. How does it work for people if they want to come in?
Yeah, so really the best way for people to come in is to jump over onto my website, spainrevealed.com, and so I can pop that in the chat at some point. But there you'll see a link for registering to get notifications when I run the next cohort. There's also some free resources there, a free buying guide for buying a home in Spain or renting a home in Spain. There's a tapas kind of 101 guide that people can download, and that's some free content. Will also get people on my list. So just going to spainrevealed.com is the best place. And so, I'm about to kick off the 7th cohort. I run it 3 times a year, about sort of 45 or so people in each course. And it goes through different modules, kind of building, the building blocks of moving, starting with vision and timeline and budget, and then moving on to like where you want to live, and then looking at your legal route, and then are you going to rent or buy, and then looking at the money side of it, and then healthcare and the actual move and shipping. Over these 8 weeks, 1 module per week, they watch recorded material. And also we have a live class where most of those are with an expert, so immigration attorney or a tax person, where they can do Q&A, right? So they've watched the material about tax or about immigration, then they can ask their burning questions to someone. I also people get access to my little black book of kind of recommended professionals, because, you can use them or not. But if you're going to use someone, as I'm sure it's the same in Portugal, you really want to get, I feel like it's like minimum 2 recommendations, right, for someone.
Well said. Here's the website that James is talking about, spainrevealed.com. Helping people fulfill their Spanish dreams. Superb. And I love it. And I think I've been involved in a similar process with people coming to Portugal. And I think one of the wonderful things about what you're doing, and I really love the way you're running it as a cohort that starts at a certain time, is that you bring people together and they bond, don't they, as a group? It's been amazing to see people move to Portugal from different parts of America who've become friends in Portugal once they've arrived. That's a really valuable part of the course, isn't it?
It is. And, there is one way to do it where it's just, you buy the course and, watch the videos and that's it. And it would be easier for me, right? If I did it as just like
and that's the passive income dream, isn't it? To have that going
dream.
on.
But I know it just doesn't work the same because the community is important for people. They join a community in that cohort, but then of the alumni. And so I get photos in our alumni Facebook group of people at Christmas getting together for drinks from other people who've moved and like, hey, we're so-and-so from cohort 3 and we're hanging out at the house from these guys from cohort 2. And it's very cool. It's very cool.
Great idea. Beautiful. So I want to talk more about Devour as well. People can call in if they've got questions for you. If you'd like to talk to James this morning, 913-590-303 on WhatsApp. And Savika Anna is so interested in what you were going to say. She stuck around from the earlier segment of the show. I think might have a comment or a question or two. Your brother lives in Barcelona, right? Anna, meet James. James, meet Anna.
Anna, how are you?
I'm great.
Nice to meet you.
And a fan of Barcelona, Anna.
Yes, I really like Barcelona. I love the arts and the city life and how there is a lot of street commerce and just the overall kind of way that the city works.
Yeah, it's a beautiful city. And, it's a city that I think as a tourist, it can be hard the first time. My brother went a couple of years back and he sort of stuck in that main sort of tourist center and he felt really overwhelmed. But, I find when I go to Barcelona, particularly if you get into like the neighborhoods, I mean, the Catalan culture is wonderful. Their food is amazing. It's a great wine region. The history is fascinating. It's a beautiful city. Speaking of clickbait.
That's an important distinction to call them Catalan and not Spanish.
That is.
I've had that experience.
Really? Okay.
I think you can call Andalusians. I mean, that's the nature of Spain. I don't know if Portugal's the same with that real regional identity, if it's the same as Spain or not the same.
Well, not really. I think you can feel a bit of that in the Algarve. Like the local people sometimes will comment like we are out of Portugal, like this is like a separate country, but it's not like Barcelona. It's very much a low-key kind of joke thing. While in Barcelona, they would totally go for independence if they could.
Well, talking of rivalries, it's really interesting to find that out. And I would agree with you from my experience, Anna. There isn't that same sort of regional competitiveness. There are jokes, aren't there, about birds flying backwards in the Alentejo and that sort of thing. But generally, people are rocking along nicely, aren't they? But the border, the Iberian Peninsula that we're on here, and what the Portuguese say about the Spanish. It'd be great to find out from you, James, what the Spanish say about the Portuguese. Anna, correct me if I'm wrong, but the Portuguese say only bad winds and bad marriages come across the border from Spain. Is that right?
Yes. We do have a lot of border rivalries with Spain.
Again, very good-natured, right? If that's the worst thing that happens, a bit of wind and the occasional bad marriage, it's not the end of the world. What do the Spanish people say about the Portuguese, James, that you can share with us safely?
I kind of feel stuck on this question. So I'm a Kiwi, right? And so we have the rivalry with Australians.
Yeah.
And so the Kiwis make jokes about the Aussies. But I'm not sure if the Aussies make many jokes about us. I don't hear the Spaniards talking a lot. Maybe it's the Spaniards I'm talking to. I mean, they don't. There's no jokes that I'm aware of. My experience is they love Portugal. Yeah. I think they often feel like it's a kind of a way to escape Spain, and it feels like, I don't know, a little more low key. Compared to Spain.
It's easy to cross the border. I think a lot of people go from Portugal to explore Spain and the other way around. I think the other way around ends up happening more because Spain is bigger and because economy-wise, it may be a bit more stable.
Yeah, well said. Well, I was in Ponte Lima at the weekend up in the north of Portugal, and I think the Spanish up there treat it. I know they go to Aveiro as well. It's very popular, isn't it? Because it's almost like the quickest route to the Portuguese coast. But in Ponte Lima, it was amazing. It was like it was being treated like Florida. People were driving their really fancy cars over and posing in Ponte Lima, driving down the street really slowly in luxury cars.
Spaniards.
Yeah, Spaniards were doing that.
Bloody Spaniards.
Coming over here in their expensive cars. Beyond Lisbon, Cati Lima. There we go. There's I think that's the saying, isn't it? Nem bom vento, nem un bom casamento. There are very few real reasons for that saying. Oh, okay, so it's just a saying, and there's not much truth to it. That's fantastic. Let's get into the food and the devour, another wonderful part of your job. So you've put behind you the job you disliked, and that in itself is a great thing to talk about. You know, not enjoying your job, changing it, and now living your dream life in Spain. I mean, that's so great to hear and an inspiration to many people, James. And now you're running a food experience company. Talk about living the dream. How is that, and how does it work?
Well, it's good. So that we founded that in 2012. I hooked up with my co-founding partner, an American woman. She had just started offering daytime food tours in Madrid, and it wasn't really a thing back then. It was just sort of kicking off as a concept. I designed an evening tour, and for the next 4 years, we gave tours. I was by night and she was by day, and then it grew and grew and grew. Just before the pandemic, we expanded outside. You know, we're in Seville, Barcelona, San Sebastian, Madrid. After that, we went to France, Italy, Portugal, as well as tours in Lisbon. And so the pandemic, obviously, you know, everything went on hold. We did the online cooking classes, you know, for our sins, like so many other people. And then after that, and so I'm not involved in the day-to-day anymore. I'm a little bit involved sort of financially, but it's not my day-to-day job. When I had a baby, again, that my wife actually gave birth to, a couple of years ago, I was like, something has to give. I can't do the channel, Spain Revealed. I can't do the day-to-day, and I can't do that. So after the pandemic, you know, I took a step back from the day-to-day in Spain. In Devour, my co-founding partner still runs the ship. And it's part of a bigger company now. We kind of merged with a bigger company, and so now there's tours in the US and everything. So I don't know. It's kind of I just love food as a way to connect people. It's incredible when you meet, you know, 8 strangers, you know, at 7 p.m. and you go on a tapas crawl together and you lead them, and then by the end of the night, it's like you've been friends for, I mean, you know, it sounds a bit, you know, a bit cheesy, but it does feel like you've been together for a long time. You've kind of bonded, and that's the beauty of food. So I love history. I love culture. I love meeting people, and food is just a great conduit for all of that. You can eat gambas in this great bar in Madrid and talk about the Civil War, because they started doing it because of the bread shortage and and after the Civil War in Spain. So you can kind of tell these stories in a way, when you tell the Civil War story through gambas al ajillo, like the medicine goes down easier, right?
It just sounds great. Yeah. It's like, can you give us a sort of classic tour? 2 words that I picked up on from the bio that you sent me were profound and authentic. Yeah. And I was saying this to Bobby O'Reilly earlier on, that, you know, we've got a little bit too much into maybe complaining about what's going on in Portugal, and not enough about the profundity and authenticity of being here and enjoying the culture. And we must get that balance right. So a classic tour then on your doorstep, on your manor, with the part that you live in Spain. What would a Devour food tour look like there?
So, for example, there's kind of like 2 types, really. You could do a daytime food tour where you're going to go to tapas bars. You're also going to go to like a market, meet the market vendors and try different produce. You're going to go to pastry shops, and we're always selecting places that, you know, that for us have what's called kind of a sense of place, what we've always called a sense of place. So if you walk into a place in your city, does it give you a sense of place of Lisbon or of Madrid? Does it tell something about the story of that place as well as the great food? It's almost like you can have a checklist, right? It's like, if the food is great, but there's no sense of place, then it doesn't work. And so the tour I designed was you know, so many years ago. The first one was this tapas and history tour, which was, you know, we'd meet in the square and I'd take people for a vermouth and sort of give them a little bit of some jamon and give them an idea of the evening, and, you know, teach them about vermouth so they can enjoy that for the rest of their trip, and how we do it, not only what it is, but how we drink that in Spain. And then we'd go for a little bit of a historical walk, you know, and tell them a little bit about the history. Then we go to another bar and we'd have a little bit more. And you know, you're trying to get places where you can introduce them to the vendors and kind of, in a way, when you go as a tourist, if I go to, you know, Croatia, I can't really connect with the people behind the bar because I don't speak the language. And so the guide is almost like a connector in a way as well. They can shake their hand and see something that they can do, create something, you know, make a dish or something like that. And so it's just a way of, I guess, connecting with the culture in a way. Like, it's probably the worst way to sell food tours. But for me personally, food on a food tour is one of the least important parts. It's yummy, right? But
Yeah,
I can, but it's like I could find a list of the 10 top places to eat. But it's really that experience of going with someone who's an insider who can connect you to these places and help you understand them. So the rest of your time, you can have an authentic experience. So always take a food tour on day 1 or day 2, because you're going to eat better the rest of the time.
Well said. And it's a perfect sort of primer, isn't it? And it makes you feel comfortable and engaged with what's going on in the culture. I absolutely love that, and would love to be doing something like that, or going and enjoying that somewhere. So you come into Lisbon, do you occasionally to do this?
So I don't personally, but we have tours. We have, Devour has tours in Lisbon. And so, there are, check those out. I actually did a food tour video in Lisbon some years ago, which I got a lot of, a lot of people said they loved it. Some people said, oh, you went to this place. I did, because I just don't know as much about Lisbon as, Spain.
I would like to jump in now if I could. So
have you seen the video?
Where are you taking us?
Yes, I'm a total foodie, and I definitely recommend Spain from a foodie perspective. I think they do have a very food, and not only food, but like you were saying, the environment, the talking through the meal. They have that culture a lot, and that's why there are so many street shops, and they are always full, and the markets are always full. Like in Portugal, that's one of the things that I miss in Portugal in comparison to Spain. Is that they don't have this meet strangers kind of culture that much. Like you feel it a bit more in the north, but in Spain and in Barcelona, people will actively go out, especially at the end of the evening, just to go to a stroll, just to meet people, just to go and sit at a tapa place and have a conversation. And that's part of the culture, and I think that's amazing. Here in Portugal is a bit different. And I'm actually also organizing something a bit different. It's a retreat that it's mix of move to Portugal, food and culture. It's going to be a 3-day thing, while your case, it's more food and culture focused. In this case, it's going to be also moving to Portugal focused. And I really hope that's not one of those cases like you were saying on the beginning, where you think it's a great idea and it doesn't work out, because I definitely think it's a great idea.
You never know, do you? You never know. You're going to have to try that. Of course, when you go out to eat, and thank you, Anna, for that insight there on the differences across the border on the Iberian Peninsula here. But of course, in Portugal, you can watch TV while you're eating. That is something that people are sometimes a little bit shocked about. There are a lot of TVs and a lot of Portuguese cafes and restaurants, and that might be part of the reason why people don't reach out and talk to each other. Maybe that's what they like. Is that the same in Spain, James?
It's exactly the same. People just talk over the TV here.
Oh, okay.
So, it's interesting what you say, Anna, that it's I guess in Portugal is a little bit more sit down, like you sit at a table rather than sort of standing at the bar and sort of flowing around the space. Is that the difference? Because the key in Spain really is that informal barroom environment where you're kind of a free agent, you're a molecule bumping around, and so you bump into people and you're rubbing shoulders, whereas the minute you're at a table, you kind of like have your space, and to go and like talk to the person at the table next to you is like a bit weird, right? But if you're standing around, it's kind of okay. Although post-pandemic, we have seen a few more places kind of lock down a little bit more table seating, which I hate. But maybe Portugal's more like that, is it?
I would say in a simple way that Spain feels a bit more extrovert, so to say. So there is more people on the street, more people talking to each other, more people randomly talking to you than it happens in Portugal, from what my personal experience.
That's interesting. I mean, couple of things I've noticed, which are impressions, which may be completely wrong because, I'm obviously not a Portugal expert. Is one thing is it's always struck me the level of English in Portugal is much higher than in Spain. And I think the Portuguese are better at marketing than the Spaniards.
Really?
Gross generalization.
That is the fact that Spaniards dub everything. While in Portugal we use subtitles, so we hear the language and it's much easier to learn it. So Spanish people, we often mock Spanish people English a lot.
Fair enough.
Hold on a minute, James. Marketing in Spain is worse than in Portugal. I mean, it's terrible here. What is it like in Spain?
I get a feeling that so one of the interesting things about starting Devour Tours was that we would, set up a tour in Seville, set up a tour in Barcelona, set up a tour in San Sebastian and Madrid. And so you negotiate with the vendor, right? Because you're not paying them by cash each time. You pay them once a month. You're like, hey, you want to get something off menu, maybe a little bit of a combination of things. And it was just interesting seeing the cultural differences of how people run. I mean, broad generalize that people run businesses in Madrid versus Seville versus Barcelona. Barcelona, they really negotiate, right? And they really get it down to the cent. Whereas in Madrid, it was a bit sort of kind of laissez-faire, but kind of, formal a little bit. Whereas in Seville, people would just had like some of them didn't even have a bank account. There's just the cash in the till. It was much more. And so in San Sebastian and North, it was again a little bit more like the Catalans. And so you saw this kind of culture a little differently. And so what I've found is that whenever I go to Portugal, they seem to have a bit more of a business, and maybe this is just Lisbon because we were setting up a tour, a bit more kind of business mindset. And maybe it's that merchant history that the Catalans have, maybe the Portuguese have, whereas in Madrid, it's a capital invented out of nothing. And so traditionally everyone's like, works for the government, or is like, running a small, tavern or something like that. Whereas in the North, there was industry. So it's like all these cultures are there. So what I love about Portugal is the way that, the marketing on the canned fish is so much better than the marketing on the canned fish in Spain. The marketing on the canned fish in Spain looks like it has been updated in 60 years, which in a way is kind of cool now because it's become retro. But you guys do that really well.
Well, that's lovely to hear. That's lovely to hear because it can be a complaint. What was it? Somebody was talking about Portuguese driving the other day. Let's not get into that. But suffice to say, a friend, an expat friend, asked his Portuguese friend, "Why do you not indicate?" And he said, "Because I don't want people to know where I'm going." And it's a bit like it's a little bit like the why do you not advertise these events? Because we always know when they're on. The festas. Yeah. The local people don't
want too many people to come.
Well, maybe they don't want people to come. They're always happy to see us when we do come. But all the locals know when it's on, so they don't need to make a poster and do a Facebook ad campaign or anything like that.
Kind of low.
I'd like to comment on what you mentioned before about the Portuguese being more business focused. I don't think the Portuguese are more business focused at all. I just think they are less trusting. So if especially a foreigner comes and they want to do business with them, will want mostly to do things by the book, not because they are very business savvy, because they are being a bit sketchy, so to say. Yeah. However, it's also a cultural thing. Like in the North, you will have much more that experience if you go to smaller locations and so on, where people will just take you on and want cash and have no bank account and pretty much walk you through the door like you are part of the family kind of thing. Yeah. But in the bigger cities like Lisbon and even very touristic locations like the Algarve, you will feel that cautious parts a lot more.
Interesting insight. Thank you so much, Anna. And thank you, James, for being in this morning. A final comment then from Antonio on this. We know whether the regions are competitive with each other. Not so much, we think, in Portugal. Portugal has only 2 national languages, says Antonio, Portuguese and Mirandês or Mirandês. This one is only spoken by some 10,000 people. So quite the niche there for the Mirandês. And yeah, I think there's a greater sense of unified national pride, perhaps, in Portugal than across the border in Spain. Anything else before we go this morning? Thanks for stepping in, Anna, as well. Lovely to have you here for this conversation. Anything else we need to know about Spain Revealed, James? What's coming up?
No, I mean, check out the YouTube channel. Just search Spain Revealed on YouTube. And yeah, I send out a newsletter an email every Tuesday with kind of information about travel and moving to Spain. So if you download one of those free guides over on the SpainRevealed.com page, then you'll get on that. And I'm on Instagram and, I'm everywhere. Search me and you'll find,
Well, thank you for making yourself available. It's been lovely to chat with you. I hope we can do it again sometime. It's quite nice to have this sort of Iberian connection, as I call it, and reaching across the border.
Iberian. I know when you said that, I was sort of like, oh, that's an interesting way to frame it. I was like, how do I pronounce that?
Well, we have been examining it. It comes from a slight discomfort at being a foreigner here in Portugal. and not wanting to appear too interested in Spain and what goes on across the border, thinking that only bad winds and bad marriages come from there. But having come out as Iberian, I've noticed there's a lot of support for it among Portuguese people as well. And Anna's a great example yourself this morning, aren't you? You've got no.
I love going to Spain, but personally, I prefer living in Portugal. But that's a personal choice.
Yes. Yep, fair enough. Okay, well, James, thank you so much. Anna, thank you for joining us as well. Hope to see you again. You have a key to the studio, and you can come and be Iberian anytime you like, James. Take care.
Iberian. I'll have to brush up on my Portuguese, I think, before I truly can call myself Iberian.
Well, bon fin de semana to you. What is the equivalent greeting for having a nice weekend in Spain, please?
Like having a good weekend?
Yeah, have a good weekend.
Que pases un buen fin de semana.
Perfect. Very similar. Bon fin de semana to you and everybody who's watching. Thanks so much for being here. Nice big round of applause for you. We'll see you on Monday.
Bye-bye.
Ciao.